today's episode of Hubris Syndrome, we're talking about Assassin's Creed Valhalla's first big DLC. Hey everyone, welcome to the show. Assassin's Creed has had some really fun and interesting DLC over the years, from Freedom Cry, which is easily one of the best, to Jack the Ripper, or The Fate of Atlantis. There's just been some really cool and interesting stuff, which brings us to Valhalla and the Wrath of the Druids. I went through this expansion, and we're gonna get into it. Not really spoilery, so don't be concerned. Let's dive in. So if you thought 100 hours wasn't enough, Wrath of the Druids is here to take us to Ireland for another about 15 to 20 hours. It took me about 15 to wrap up this DLC. The first thing that struck me is Ireland. My favorite part about this entire series is learning about places and history, and I just went down the rabbit hole with Ireland. I was learning all about it. This stuff is so cool to me. Learning about the Vikings, learning about Druids in Irish culture and folklore, just some really fun stuff. And it looks really pretty. There's just a lot of color, really satisfying to navigate. And specifically, that's, I think, because of the fast travel options. Even if you get them all, they're spread out enough as to where you still have to traverse that last little bit to get where you need to go. And I really just liked coming over a cliff and seeing this big downhill that you could just ride your horse or mount down. So just really satisfying to traverse. There's 4 big zones in this whole thing, each with their own host of, loot to find and mysteries to uncover. Very, very similar to the base game, so know that going in. It is extremely similar, so a lot more of the same. So if you loved Valhalla, if you love this franchise, here's more of it. And speaking of those similarities, this time you're leveling up Dublin, the town of Dublin, and it is very addicting. So to level up Dublin, you are working closely with Azar, which is an amazing character, my favorite character in this DLC, one of my favorite characters in all of Valhalla, Azar. So you're working with Azar, and they're in charge of your trading. So you set out and you capture a couple outposts that are spread out over the whole map, and you can then find resources and then trade those to Azar, and that gives you gear or levels up your town of Dublin. And it's just straight up addicting. It is so addicting. Clearing these outposts, leveling them up, going on raids to get resources, which you can then pump into your outposts, and then taking all of those resources and then trading them with Azar to level up Dublin. It's just a really satisfying, addicting loop. Nothing new here, nothing we haven't done in video games or in this series, but it's done in a way that made me care. And of course, there is a nice little surprise waiting for you when you max out your Dublin level. I won't spoil that, but it's worth it. So even though it feels very similar to Valhalla, basically identical, there are missions that encourage that old school Assassin's Creed vibe. And what I mean by that is there are a couple points in the game when you need to do some side missions, and those side missions have optional objectives, and if you clear those optional objectives, you get more resources, which can then be traded to Azir, so you want to do these. And those optional missions are things like only kill the target, or don't be alerted, or don't take any damage. And I found myself using the cloak, sneaking into these environments and living that assassin lifestyle, walking on a tightrope and jumping down and assassinating someone. The bonuses for clearing these optional objectives are so marginal and so unnecessary, though, that it really doesn't matter. And still, at the end of the day, this is Valhalla, Origins, Odyssey, same shit. You're a warrior, not an assassin. Come at me, Ubisoft. Honestly, you are a warrior in these games. So every single time, classic Assassin's Creed Valhalla, let me just run in and kill everyone, because honestly, it's way easier, and most importantly, it's faster to just go in and massacre everyone instead of sneaking around in the bushes. So we're still not quite at that point in this franchise where we have those Ezio style, Altair style assassinations. We're still not there, but at least it felt like they were aware of it and they were trying to get it into Wrath of the Druids.
What's this?
Which brings us to the end of the episode. If you loved Valhalla and you love this style of Assassin's Creed, this is more of the same and definitely worth checking out. If you were checking your watch and looking at the clock for the 100-hour length of Valhalla, this is not essential. This is not essential to the Assassin's Creed franchise lore, and at the end of the day, this didn't really feel essential for Eivor as well. But I still enjoyed my time with it, and again, I do want to stress that if you just love the comforting dopamine of leveling things up and taking out Templars or whatever it may be, then absolutely, this is worth it. There is just something so familiar and comforting about Assassin's Creed, for better or worse. But that's it for the episode. I'm Uncle Huber. We are Easy Allies. If you like what you saw, check us out on Patreon and like, subscribe, all that stuff on YouTube. It really helps us out. And that is Assassin's Creed Wrath of the Druids. There will be more Huber Syndromes next week, probably back to Resident Evil, because that's all we do here is Resident Evil. Thanks so much for watching. Love and respect. See you next week.